From this point on, we don't want air back in the tool. So now I'm going to lay it down.
You want the regulator?
No, we don't need it for this part, but when we go to do, we're just going to do cycling, and we're going to watch the oil in here to see how much air comes out versus the oil. And also you'll see that this will move, not a lot, but it will move that much. So what I like to do is I like to let it move maybe a dozen times or so, just to work out any air that might be in those seals. Now you're never going to get it all out, but and you can play with it. You can let it go back. You can move it forward. It's only going a little bit. Now, once I cycle that a few times, I'll just run this out, locked together. Can't move now. And now you can take and cycle the tool. Now I'm doing it slow. I'm not doing it real fast and having the oil go flying around. I'm gonna let you guys play with it. But you can do it this way then. You see the little air bubble come up? Not a lot. Ooh, big air pocket. Okay. Bring it this way. You get most of your air out when you move. Now, the only thing is you don't want to get this too far on its side so you suck air back in. You got to keep this filled with oil at all times. Pump it a couple times like this. And that, if you watch, you'll see that oil go up and down a little bit, right? You want to lock this forward now. The last thing you want to make sure before you're ready to, now I can cycle this again a couple times if I want to make sure, you know, just to make sure I got all the air out of there, which I'm pretty sure it's out. The last thing you want to make sure is this is out. This is lightly, just bring it up like that. Don't go crazy, just bring it up. We know our piston now. Make sure that this piston is all the way forward. And then I bring it up light, just like that. The air is on it. That means my piston's down here. This is forward and that's filled. That's the last thing you want before we're going to button the tool up. So now, the reason I use this port is when I take this out of here, now don't hit your trigger, but I leave the air on, otherwise it relaxes and you can get a little. Now, the way we did this is we can take the large ball, right, drop it right in, the spring in the guide, drop that right in, and this is the screw with the little hollow end.
You have your O-ring?
No, that O-ring came off of
something else. That's off that screw held the piston on.
Now when you run this in, just wiggle it like this because that little post has to go up in that hole. Okay? You'll know if you ever jam that post because this reservoir won't move at all. I mean, it just never will move. And you're going to see the first time we do this, we're going to get movement in the reservoir. We're going to, because we don't have all the air out of the tool yet. The next step is you bring it up this way, right? And just take that one out. Now, don't hit this because we don't want you to make a mess. Because that oil will hit the ceiling. Thank you. Now, what I like, if you could just put a little tiny bit of grease inside of the end of that cup, just a little tiny bit.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Good. Let's just get enough on here so that sticks, right? Mm-hmm. And this is always a pain in the neck, but you'll get it because if this isn't all together right, you won't get. You'll know right away because that plug that he just took out won't go in. So I usually do that. And I use a screwdriver. Well, that one's not, it's a little too big, so I'll use this just to make sure it's in. I don't add any oil, and the reason I don't is because when you put this in, now, before you just put it in, we're not going to screw it down yet. Grab me that little 244. We're going to talk about this. If you notice, this one has a set screw in the center of it. What I recommend is any of these tools, you order some of these, they come as a assembly. What this allows us to do now is when I screw this in, okay, once that O-ring seal starts to seal, it acts like a piston, and it actually has a tendency to want to overfill the tool and put a little extra pressure pushing back on the front of this piston, okay? This allows us to open up that set screw, and it's a relief valve. You thread this in then, and you'll see the oil come up out of the center of this. Once you get that in, then you tighten the set screw up. Okay, this is just a new style. This will work for you. This just makes it a little bit easier. What it really does is if you get a tool, like when we cycle this now, if it gets out of whack a little bit and we need to pull the piston forward or relieve the pressure, you can just loosen the center of this and the oil comes out, where now we have to unthread the whole thing to get it to move out. Now, I'm going to run this in. And you'll notice it's right because there's no pressure on that at all now until we get a couple turns in and you'll feel it start to push on the spring. That's the new design. The older ones had a lot of tension on them. Now, first thing I'm going to check before I go any farther is that this should not have locked on there. That means whatever little extra oil we have in here that I pushed in, it's not leaking by, okay? If you get any leakage on this valve, this will lock to that. Why? What happens when this valve leaks?
It goes
in the front of the piston.
Yeah.
This is the front of the piston.
Yeah.
If we put oil in the front of the piston, it pulls the piston back, locks these two together. So this is your key on the bleed process, whether or not this locks together. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the reservoir.
Now you don't want to pull it.
No.
Pull it, right?
Well, we're going to pull it eventually, but once it's closed up, you can pull the trigger. When I pull the trigger, there's not going to be any movement, so we're going to build real high pressure. So for safety factor, we're going to put the regulator in here. We're going to drop it down to 40, 45, 50 pounds would even be okay.
Right.
The old days, we always did it full pressure, but we feel that we shouldn't be doing that.
In the book, it's recommended in the book. Right?
Yeah, I think it's 40 or 45. Anything that's at least no higher than 50 will be in good shape. Like again, I've done it for years. I did it at full pressure. When you do it, don't put your head over it because if anything happened, it was going to go up anyway. Now, some tools, when you let this go right now, it's only going to go down a quarter of the way, maybe a half. This reservoir, that's normal. Some of our newer tools, because of the newer machining ports and everything, they have a tendency to go down almost all the way. And when that happens, I always put a little bit of oil back in before I start doing any of this cycling. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off and see. Okay, now this is one of the ones that went down. We had a little bit extra air in here, so it went down about 3/4. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to go any farther with it. At this point, I want to open that like that. And we're going to just take this screw, which is the other side, the one that's on this side. There's no valve in here. Okay. This is just a place to put oil. Yeah.
Now the ones that don't have the oil on the backside, are they easier to bleed than
Oh yeah. Just put the bottle on it and you're done.
Yeah, so
there's none of this stuff. Okay? See what I'm doing here? I'm putting it down, and then what happens is it gets a bubble normally, so you do this. Look at it. Now I can put more oil in there again. It's just, you know, I've done this so many times, I know what it's going to do. Okay? You see where the bottom of the oil is now. Okay? Let's see what happens when I do this. Now, you can tell when this thing has no more air in the return side, because what I just did there, that would fall right off. This screw, when the O-ring hits, acts like a little piston, and it'll push that out and that'll fall down. I know there's still oil and air in there, but we haven't cycled it yet. We haven't done any of the... Okay, now, regulator. Now when I put this down, you'll see we only went down a little bit. Well, when I push on it, it goes down a little bit. Here's 45 pounds. It's not that critical. Really, more than anything, Hank likes you to do it because not only the safety, but he says that if you go too fast, that's ahead of our engineering, that you might get aeration. So now I'm going to push this. This is going to not move, but we're going to load the tool up with pressure. I'm going to push on this, and all we're checking really is the pull side, not the return.
Aeration, you mean like they make too fine of bubbles to really get out?
Yeah, and eventually they come out, but they're a pain. So this way everything moves slower. So I'm going to do this. And I'm going to push on this, and this should go down a little bit, and then stop. Push on that right now. You'll find. You push on that. You'll see that thing is okay. It's pretty hard now.
Now you might have a pinch point right there.
Right. Well, if everything's right, it's only going to be a little bit. Now you see what we got here. This is not locking up, and this would, yeah, absolutely good. Now, if you had leakage in that valve, you'll know right up front here because this will lock up. Sometimes with the newer tools and even with the older ones, the first time you do this, they will lock up. What I suggest you do then is just lock this forward, lay this down, open that screw, and then close it again. Don't put any oil in it, and re-dead stall the tool. And if it doesn't lock up, you're in good shape. If it locks up, then that means you have something in the seat is probably leaking. Now we kind of knew this seat was good because the tool wasn't drifted when we got it. So this is really working nice. Pretty much what you see right now is what you're going to get. It's working good. This is solid as a rock. It's not moving anymore. So we're ready to put the final oil in it and pull some fasteners. So now what you would do is you take this off and we're going to put oil in it. And this is where you ought to see this thing fall off on you if everything's working right. So watch, we're going to go like this. Okay, we're going to put oil in it. And we're going to see if we got an air bubble. Ooh, we did. This must have a good 90-degree turn in it. It's funny. Some of them, you one shot and you get it. The other ones. Now, if I don't have any air left in here, when I screw this down, that thing is going to fall off. Oh, I guess I've done this once or twice.
That makes up for everything else.
Just like you said.
Because I had control over this.
You're good.
That was sweet.
Just like you said.
Now, none of this is really told you whether or not the front side itself has any problems, other than we do know that we're not getting any major leakage internally. But 99.5% of the time, when everything works as good as this, it's going to go out, and next time it'll come back. Okay, and then we'll remove this.
Not this time.
There you
Okay.
go. Great.
Okay. Okay, so we take off the stall nut, and we're going to take off the retaining nut. Now, what I was going to say, the one way to really tell whether this piston's all the way forward is you could measure it. If you call Kingston, there's a measurement. If you look in a book, there's probably a measurement. What I normally do on these older tools, on the 246s and 256s, is there's a hole on the piston. Remember you saw that? That hole should be in the center or forward in this hole. I don't know, can you zoom in on that?
Yeah.
Can you see the dimple in there? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, you can.
Okay. Okay. That dimple that's in there should be, like, again, centered or forward. If it's touching just the back, you should be able to see the whole dimple. That pretty much tells you the piston is where it should be. The minute it drifts, okay? Now, we're going to put the nose on. Sometimes if you have a tool that's just drifted, okay, all we're going to want to do is put it back in sequence. And the way we would do that is we would take and put your stall nut back on and lock your reservoir forward, and we would take the front screw here, and all we're going to do is opening it up, pull the piston back forward again, and we're just going to take and tighten this back up again. And that will neutralize the oil that's in the front of the piston. Again, that's only if you want to pull a drifted piston back. When would you do that? You would do that if you still had a full column of oil, or you had oil that you could see in the reservoir and everything was working right except that the piston was out of what we call phase, and you wanted to move it back forward again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to refill the tool and top it off, because we are low, and we had a tool here that we purposely drifted, and now we're going to fill it back up and make sure everything stays back in the right sequence. Ooh. No. Okay, now you asked about the short side. This is just to show you what not to do, and I didn't do it purposely to show you what not to do, but you'll notice you can still see springs, because I wasn't paying attention here, and I did the short side. And that is also why that thing wasn't working right when I was pulling that piston forward. Okay, what I'm going to do is lock this long side right there. Correct? Yes. That's why I was having trouble with why I kept pumping oil out of that thing. I want to make sure that we get as much as that out of there. We may still have to put a little bit of oil left back in here. We'll find out, yeah. But we're going to dead stall it one more time, and then we're going to fill it for the last time. Nice and tight. Probably came down a little bit on the reservoir. Yep, a little bit. This should be loose. Okay, it's not, so we're going to have to do it one more time. That's the downside to when it's drifting. It's much easier to rebleed the whole tool because you notice it went back together much easier. So we're going to have to relieve this side one more time. We shouldn't have done that, should we?
It's good to know how to pull that piston forward though.
No, I didn't have that piston all the way forward. I'm telling you, it was because I didn't have the reservoir in the right direction. I know you may find that hard to believe, but it's true, you know. Work with me here, will you?
Phil, it's a good thing to know you got big shoulders, you know.
Goes along with everything else, right? Let's see if it works. As long as it doesn't get any worse, you're okay. Well, that just means it's otherwise, yeah, but now it's not. Okay? Now we're going to fill it up for our last time. We're going to put a nose assembly on it. We're going to pull fasteners. And he's going to take this tool back to him and say, look what I did.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, I was thinking, do we have fasteners?
Yes, we do.
That's right, fasteners.
I'm glad that.
We have a few.
Yeah, right.
Just a couple though.
Yeah.
We're almost out.
Almost.
He said he's got a. He said they got some 1/4 inch blinds right back there in the bag or something.
They're in a box right there.
So we can use their nose.
Sounds good.
Yeah, he puts a blind bolt.
Okay, we're going to take this back out and we'll screw everything apart and put our nose on.
Yeah.
So it's not really for this. Now, here's the easiest way. Just get it started like that and back that off. That holds that ring in place. Otherwise, you're going to fight with that ring until you're blue in the face. Okay, wrench. I'm going to tell you something. With this style nose, which is they got that lock ring, you can use Vibratite, bring it down, and just lightly snug it. And then let the Vibratite work. Otherwise, stake it. Go in with the punch. If you tighten that down, what will happen is that's such a soft ring. I don't even know if you knew this. That's such a soft ring, it'll actually flare out if you tighten it too much. And it will ruin all kinds of stuff there. Now, your newer nose assemblies don't have anything that's designed new. They don't have the that little soft collar. The hard steel goes all the way right to the end, and then you can run it on and tighten it down as tight as you want it.
Okay.
You put this on. Now, what kind of, is this a self-releasing nose? Okay, we're going to use the new deflector because we like it. And we're going to put this nut back on. Now, this nut, you have to be careful with this nut because if you get yours here, it'll pull right out. This was for a Jiffy nose where you can put it on and turn it. And actually, you can even put this one on that way. You can run this on like this.
Like a bayonet type.
Right, and then you can put this on. When it fits, yeah. The problem is there's a burr inside of this one. What we're going to do here is we're going to actually get it in where it's supposed to be, and leave it in, and we'll thread it in this way, so we know what it's in. This is not these nuts shouldn't be used. They came in the bag back years ago. We put them in the bag for people that had Jiffy noses. It tells you right in there, only used with Jiffy noses, but no.
These nuts shouldn't be used.
As you said, they know better. Keep them lined up. Okay, we're on good. If you need to move it, you just turn, you have to loosen the nut up. Okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to install. So we're going to put our fastener in. And I'm going to try, let me see if I can do this slowly so we can get a better.
Not with that gun.
That was slow.
The last thing we have to do before you leave today is scrape the Wesco tag off of there.
Hey.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do one more, and this time I'll just do it full speed, which isn't really any much different than the slow speed.
Right.
And I'll hold that like that so you can get a picture of the.
Good. Yeah. It's working now.
What was that?
Yeah, so it can't come out, back out.
Now, if we look over here, you'll see you haven't lost any oil. You're right up to the very top.
What
There was the ribbons.